When Lightfall released, Arc Titan was hit with some pretty serious nerfs. Among them was the nerf to the duration of storm grenades, a 50% nerf to Heart of Inmost Light's empowerment uptime, and a 50% nerf to the Spark of Resistance linger duration. Not to mention that this subclass was arguably hit the hardest by the removal of elemental wells. Pair this with the release of powerful new strand subclasses and new solar fragments that are even stronger than the ones we had previously, and it's easy to see why this subclass has kind of fallen by the wayside. Today, I'll be covering an updated Arc 3.0 Titan build that is not only stupidly fun, it also showcases why Arc Titan is still one of the most dominant subclasses in the game. And it even features a surprise exotic that makes you unkillable and can refund your super in less than 30 seconds. I'm Above, and if you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now, let's get into it. Starting things off with our super, the only viable option at the moment, in my opinion, is Thunder Crash. It's an extremely versatile super with a relatively short cooldown, and as you guys already know, it's a monster in boss DPS situations. Moving on to our abilities, first up, we have Thruster, and the reason we use this over something like a Barricade is because it has the shortest base cooldown at just 36 seconds. Some may argue that the Rallycade provides more value as it can give you protection with just a slightly longer cooldown at 38 seconds, but the downside is that it also has a longer animation to activate the ability and doesn't offer the escapability that Thruster does. As for your jump, this is totally personal preference, but I prefer Strafe Lift for faster overall movement speed. As for our melee, I went with Thunderclap as it is once again the shortest cooldown while also dealing significant damage that can impact multiple targets at once, and is absolutely busted when paired with the exotic I'll be showcasing later in the video. And those storm grenades used to be the meta pick here, I actually went with pulse grenades. You see, storm grenades have been nerfed several times at this point, while pulse grenades actually received a 20% damage buff with Lightfall's sandbox update, and these grenades hit like an absolute truck now. Pulse grenades will also be a key component to all Arc builds moving forward, as they will single-handedly help ability regen, which storm grenades cannot. As for our aspects, we have Knockout, which states that when critically wounding a target or breaking its shield, it infuses your melee attacks with Arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Defeating targets with melee attacks also starts health regeneration and makes you amplified, which increases your movement speed and weapon handling. Next up, we have Touch of Thunder, which grants your grenades enhanced functionality. This will allow our pulse grenades to generate ionic traces as it damages a target, and also increases the damage of our grenade over time. For those who aren't familiar, ionic traces are bolts of arc energy that seek towards the user and grant ability energy when picked up. The more of these we generate, the more ability energy is refunded, allowing us to cycle abilities more than ever before. And with how much the regen of this class has been impacted by nerfs, ionic traces will be the key to restoring the ability cycling that we previously knew last season. Moving on to our fragments, first up we have Spark of Shock, which states that arc grenades will jolt targets. This not only deals additional damage to enemies, it also chains lightning to nearby enemy targets and is an extremely reliable way to stun overload champions as well. We'll be pairing this with Spark of Ions, which will generate an ionic trace each time we defeat a jolted target. So we're not only generating ionic traces by using pulse grenades, we'll generate additional ionic traces each time we defeat a jolted target, whether that be killing jolted enemies with our grenade or using a volt shot weapon that jolts every time you use the perk. Our next fragment is Spark of Magnitude, which increases the duration of our pulse grenades by 50%, taking their linger duration from 4 seconds all the way up to 6 seconds. This not only allows our pulse grenades to ramp up their damage over time, it also allows them to generate a higher volume of ionic traces against bosses and larger waves of adds. And last but not least, we have Spark of Resistance. This fragment provides a stackable 25% damage resist on top of tier 10 resilience when you're surrounded by 3 or more combatants, which will pretty much be doing all the time. Seeing that this is the ultimate Titan Punch build, this is the perfect fragment to help us stay alive. And now it's time for the build to come together. Starting with our exotics, first up we have Heart of Inmost Light, which still works extremely well in endgame content even after the nerfs. Pulse grenades are genuinely a saving grace for the subclass, and if you haven't used them just yet, they're actually insane. They deal a ton of damage, and the ionic traces they produce help replicate the elemental well regen that we had last season. And though it's not on the same level, it's still pretty damn strong. But the exotic that takes this build to the next level in the current sandbox is one that's actually been collecting dust in your vault for quite some time now, and that is an insurmountable skull fort. This exotic is known for refunding your melee abilities when you get a charged melee kill, but what most people forget is that these melee final blows also trigger health regeneration, and with Thunderclap being a high damage melee ability, it makes it easy to consistently secure melee kills in PvE, which means we essentially have infinite healing. Diving into our armor mods, on our helmet we have triple hands-on. This mod provides bonus super energy on melee kills, which synergizes perfectly with this build. As you can see in the background footage, these mods allow you to cycle your Thunder Crash in less than 30 seconds, which is absolutely ridiculous when you have such a powerful super at your disposal. These mods do have diminishing returns with multiple copies applied, so if you want to remove one for a Siphon mod or a heavy ammo finder, definitely feel free to do so. On our gauntlets, we have Heavy Handed, which generates an orb of power every time we get a charged melee kill, which is every single time we use this ability. I paired this with Focusing Strike, which grants us class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack, which means we'll essentially have thruster available to us at all times. And last but not least, we have Firepower, which generates an orb of power on each grenade final blow. To ensure this mod costs just 1 point, you'll want to make sure that you have authorized mods grenades unlocked on your artifact, which will allow us to generate orbs on every charged melee kill and every charged grenade kill to help us cycle our supers even faster. On our chest piece, I recommend running as many resist mods as possible. There really isn't anything fancy here, it's simply about staying alive. On the boots, everything is based around picking up orbs of power, and each time we do so, we'll get a 10% damage bonus from the weapon surge mod of our choice. We reduce our grenade cooldown with Innervation, and instantly replenish a portion of our health with Recuperation. This means that every time we secure a melee kill, we're getting massive super gains thanks to hands-on, and we're generating orbs of power thanks to heavy-handed every time we do this. Now pair this with the fact that we're getting a weapon damage bonus, grenade energy refunds, and instant healing, and you have quite the build on your hands. And on the class item, if we do happen to miss a charged melee, we have Bomber to help regen our grenade energy, which will help us produce ionic traces to refund our other abilities, and 2 outreach mods to help regen our melee ability with thruster if we ever lose it. These mods synergize perfectly with one another, and will quench your Titan's everlasting thirst for crayons. Punch everything, tank insane amounts of damage, and annihilate everything that stands in your path. This build dominates raids, dungeons, and even underleveled content like the legendary campaign and master secret missions. Though Heart of Inmost Light is likely the go-to option for grandmasters and master raids, this build is stupidly fun and is very strong almost everywhere in the game. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. You can also catch me live on Twitch over at twitch.tv/above, where I'll be streaming an updated subclass tier list this Friday, so be sure to swing on by the stream to join the discussion. That's it from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!